Good morning to everyone. I would like to welcome you all to this panel about Palestine, Israel, and international politics. And thank you for participating in the Middle East Congress organized by the Middle East Institute of Sakarya University. My name is Dr. İbrahim EFE, and I'll be moderating this panel. In this occasion, we will have 4 outstanding presentations from our prominent presenters, whom I believe will enrich our insights and knowledge regarding the theme of this panel. Each presentation will be 15 minutes, and at the end of the presentations, we will have a Q&A session of 20 minutes. Before the presentations begin, please allow me to introduce the presenters. Our first presenter is Dr. Diego Chica Hidalgo from University of Granada. He'll be talking about colonization of Palestine, and in particular about the Israeli practices of appropriation and dispossession in Jerusalem. Next is Yusuf Al-Jamal, a PhD candidate from Middle East Institute of Sakarya University, who will be presenting a paper on the role of American and European churches in the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement against Israel and its impact on Israel. Then we will have a presentation dwelling on the question of peaceful coexistence for ending the Israel-Palestine conflict, which will be presented by Özüm, Sezin, UZUN, an assistant professor doctor from Istanbul Aydın University. Finally, we will have Nurcan YURDAKUL, a PhD student from Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University, who will share her research on the foundation of British Consulate in...
I'm sorry to interrupt. There is a misunderstanding and misinformation. I'm not a PhD student. I'm a PhD for 10 years now.
I'm sorry.
I'm a regular university professor at University of Yıldırım Beyazıt University. So it is something to be corrected. I emailed already yesterday, but it seems that it is not recorded yet.
Many apologies, Dr. Nurcan Yurdakul. This one was taken from the conference program. Please accept my apologies. Dr. Nurcan Yurdakul will share her research on the foundation of British Consulate in Ottoman Jerusalem as an implication of Anglo-Russian rivalry. And I'm already excited to hear their insight on the topics. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Dr. Diego Chica. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ibrahim. I would like to, good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the Middle East Institute and University for organizing this 5th Middle East Congress on Politics and Society. And this is my second opportunity to be in a conference in Sakarya. This time it's online. I would have liked it to be in presence there, but at least I can share my research with you through this meme, and also I will be delighted to talk with you and to chat about your research and your comments on mine too. So this my presentation, I have a small PowerPoint on this, so I'm going to share it. Yeah, and now here it is. So my presentation today is going to show some of the results of our research on Jerusalem and the colonizing process that this city has suffered across history, as something that it has not finished yet. Because this is important, and it was important for us, this topic, because at least in Western Europe, Jerusalem is no longer visible as a colonized and divided city. So after the Oslo Accords framework agreements, it was not visible anymore this division of the city and the colonization processes ongoing on that. And this is due to the idea inside the Oslo agreements on trying to promote a negative peace just based in the stopping the violence in the conflict, but is not addressing the rest of violences happening in this conflict. And many of them were just a product of these colonial processes ongoing in the whole region, and particularly in Jerusalem. So this was our idea to visibilize this and to explain the situation of the city now after this approach. What we have found is that also after the Oslo agreements and along the post-Oslo period, we are going to find the similar dynamics that happened before. So there are ongoing colonial processes happening in this city, and there are particularly two big processes here. We have a process of de-Arabization, where you can find many policies and practices by Israel state and Israeli authorities restricting Palestinian population in Jerusalem, limiting the conditions for Palestinian development, and weakening Palestinian identity and cultural heritage in the city. And in parallel, there are also dynamics of Israelization and Judaization of the city. So they try to keep changing the environment of the city, and through different policies, like setting new Jewish immigrants in Jerusalem and facilitating the economic development of these new settlers there. Also promoting new narratives, highlighting Jewish identity, cultural heritage in the city. It doesn't matter if they are real or fake, they are just trying to develop that identity, that new identity for the city. And these dynamics, these colonial dynamics in the city have been contested by Palestinian population in the city across the history, 20th century and this 21st century. With the strategies of sometimes armed and not other times unarmed, and sometimes organized and other unorganized. But it is clear to our understanding that these processes have been contested strongly by the Palestinian population, the local population. So we started to search on this, and we were able to find and to show what were these, or how these processes look like in the British Mandate. Also after that, with the Nakba and the division of Jerusalem in 1948, but also during and after the conquer and annexation of East Jerusalem during the Nakba in 1967. And finally, still nowadays. So it is clear from the very beginning of the British Mandate that the ideas that the colonizer had in their mind, and the previous image of the city as a city already divided in their minds across ethnic and religious lines, they try to implement, or they develop policies according to that previous image that they have about the city, when this was probably not very much true. But the new urban developments and policies developed by the British Mandate in the city increased or started the division of the city in the 20s and 30s. So that's clear through different measures that they have. So this was the image of Jerusalem, how Jerusalem looked like just before the Nakba. Still a mixed city with a strong population of, or a wide population of Palestinians living there, with non-Palestinians or new and new settlers and old Jews that were living in the city at that time. Then, with the Nakba, the city changed a lot, as you know, and we found this derealization of the city, forced displacement with ethnic cleaning, and also, well, there are people calling this urbicide. But the fact was that almost 30,000 people, Palestinian people, were expelled from the city itself, plus the surrounding people from other towns and villages around the city. And this derealization of the city also was followed with the settlement of new immigrants in West Jerusalem, as you know. And also there were some laws implemented by the Israeli state trying to prevent the return of these refugees to the city, but also trying to dispossess already the properties of these people. And after that, of course, the city, as you know, was divided between West and East Jerusalem, and East Jerusalem was oriented to the east, to Transjordan, while the West Jerusalem was oriented to the west, to Israel, and it was converted into the de facto capital of Israel. So, yeah, this process, it continues or increase the results of the Arabization and the Israelization of the city after the Nakba. The Nakba raised all the barriers in the city. It apparently unified the city, but in fact it kept a deep division of the city without physical barriers. We have many examples of this. We have the immediately destruction of the Moroccan quarter after the occupation of the city of the East Jerusalem, and we have the expansion of the city area beyond the municipal boundaries fixed during the Jordanian control of the city in the previous decades. And this also have strong effects also in Palestinians in the West Bank, because many of them were just from one day to the other became citizens of the Jerusalem municipality and were separated from the rest of the West Bank. You can see here the changes in the city after this Nakba in 1967. And you can see also the beginning of the new developments, of the new policies developed by the occupying power in these years, in the 70s. So we are going to see how the authorities are going to apply in that moment a discriminatory, complex legal system to restrict the presence of Palestinian population in the city. They were granted the residency status, but not citizenship. They appropriated of the land, the Israeli authorities and the state of Israel, and they made available only 13% of the land for Palestinian development in East Jerusalem. And also, since 1967 till 2 years ago, the amount of settlers installed in this part of the city in East Jerusalem increased until 220,000 people in an ongoing process that it has not stopped yet. Also, we are going to see how these settlers create new quarters in East Jerusalem and occupy already 35% of the land in the city. Remember, only 13% of the land in East Jerusalem is allocated for Palestinians, while 35% of East Jerusalem land is allocated for settlers, new settlers in the city. And this is going to be these settlements are going to be big blocks, creating quarters by themselves, but also trying to split Palestinian quarters with small settlements inside of them, just to create the division of the east part of the Palestinian population in East Jerusalem. And we are going to see this, and this is how it looks like today. You can see in violet the settlements in East Jerusalem together with the Palestinian areas in like a more yellow color. And also you can see another effect which is going to continue this dynamics of the Arabization of the city and Israelization, with the creation of this wall around the city, separating Palestinian neighborhoods from the West Bank, but also letting outside of the city to people, Palestinians, who were living in the boundaries of the Jerusalem municipality, but now they were excluded in order to create facts on the ground. So this colonization process didn't stop during the Oslo Accords, and we are going to see how the expulsion of Palestinians keep going with the loss of residency status by almost 15,000 of them, and they are every year they are adding new people to this list. We are going to see how the East Jerusalem has been disconnected from West Bank, but also we have a lot of, for instance, discriminatory policies against Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. Just one data here, in the municipality budget, we are going to see how just 10% of the city budget is allocated for the Palestinian in East Jerusalem, while they represent the 38% of the population of the whole city. So imagine how that affects to the development of the people in that part of the city. We have many examples of this, and we can discuss them later on in the question and answers. And finally, just I would like to emphasize also that these policies of the Arabization and Israelization of the city have been contested by the Palestinians, by the Palestinian people, sometimes through organized resistance, other times through non-organized resistance, from everyday resistance to also mass protest and civil resistance properly. And we have plenty of these examples already in the city. So I don't have much time, I think, so I'm going to finish here. If you want to discuss something else or to ask me something, I will be available in the final part of the panel. So my last words are going to be that this is the example of Jerusalem and the processes happening in Jerusalem. It is just a part of all the colonial, still the colonial policies developed by Israel in the whole Palestinian area. And well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diego. Now we will move on with Yusuf Al-Jamal, and yeah, he will have 15 minutes to present his presentation. It's your turn now, Yusuf Al-Jamal.
Thank you very much for organizing this conference, and thank you, Diego, for your presentation. I will directly proceed to my presentation titled The Role of Faith Groups in the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions Movement Against Israel. And I have the study case of churches in the US and Europe. It's mostly the US and the UK where most churches are located. So as we know that in 2005, on the first anniversary of the International Court of Justice ruling that the Israeli separation wall in the West Bank is illegal, 171 Palestinian NGOs issued a call urging their counterparts all over the world to adopt a comprehensive boycott and divestment sanctions movement or campaign against Israel, similar to the one waged against the apartheid regime in South Africa, until Israel allow Palestinian refugees to return back. So these are the three main demands of the BDS movement: to allow the Palestinian refugees to return back to their towns and villages according to the UN Resolution 194, and to treat Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship to full equality. There are almost 20% of Israel's population. They are Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship. And to dismantle settlements and the wall, so to end the military occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. The BDS call came at a time when the peace process, quote unquote, failed to achieve a peaceful resolution to the conflict based on two-state solutions, where a Palestinian state with Jerusalem, East Jerusalem as its capital, would be established next to Israel. So after the failure of the two-state solution, and with Israel's continuing colonization in the West Bank, the BDS call came to surface. The BDS call also represents all Palestinians. So Palestinians and NGOs and political parties who signed this call live everywhere in the world. They represent Palestinians inside Israel, Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinians in the diaspora. And these are again the three demands of the BDS movement. Since its foundation, the BDS movement has achieved remarkable successes, especially in Western Europe and the United States, with more unions, syndicates, churches, faith groups joining the BDS call. Not only this, the EU imposed restrictions on Israeli goods manufactured in the West Bank, in Israeli settlements, illegal settlements in the West Bank, which are designated as illegal under international law. Other countries such as South Africa, Ireland, and Chile imposed also restrictions on Israeli goods and products produced and manufactured in the West Bank. And when we talk about the BDS movement, it takes three forms. So BDS means boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Boycott is on the personal level. So when a person wants to boycott a good, like in Ireland, for example, it's a very popular movement where a lot of Irish people do not buy Israeli goods. So it's on the personal level. Divestment is on an institutional level, where institutions such as churches, universities, unions say we will not invest in companies, in Israeli companies maintaining Israel's occupation, or international companies, as we'll see, maintaining Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories. While sanctions, it's the hardest part and the final part. It's on a state level, and it's the hardest and the final stage of the BDS call. So the aim of this paper is to highlight efforts undertaken by various US and EU churches following the Palestine call for churches worldwide to adopt and support the BDS movement. So that the Palestine call is an imitation of the South Africa call, which was made in 1985, in which mainly Black churches and townships in South Africa called on their counterparts to boycott the apartheid regime in South Africa until it was brought to its knees. The same thing happened in 2009. Palestinian churches and Christian leaders in Palestine called on churches to adopt the BDS call until Israel allow, the three demands: allow Palestinian refugees to return back, treat Palestinians in Israel to full equality, and dismantle its military occupation of the West Bank. The call, the Kairos Palestine call, is titled "A Moment of Truth, a Word of Faith, Hope, and Love from the Heart of Palestinian Suffering." Now, the theoretical framework for this paper is theology of liberation. And theology of liberation as a theory, it came out in the 1960s and 1970s in Latin America to provide a critique to liberation as a theory, including discussing the theology of liberation, philosophy of liberation, and psychology of liberation. To make it easy and simple, there are three levels of the meaning of the term liberation, according to this theory: the political liberation of oppressed peoples and social classes, man's liberation in the course of history, and liberation from sin as a condition of life. So basically, churches wanted to take a political stand and support oppressed people. It's not just like they are religious people, they do not get involved in politics. No, they say it's part and parcel of their faith is to support, to take a political stance when people are oppressed and suppressed. In September 1984, the Vatican issued a document warning against the dangers of the theory of liberation. Also, members of associated with the Reagan administration in the US published a document urging the need to counter liberation theology. We have Camilo Torres, a Latino-American theologian, who noted that the theology of liberation arises out of revolutionary paradoxes, noting that it focuses on the society rather than the church. So basically, it's the involvement of the church in public life, especially in politics. Now I'll move quickly to the second part of my presentation on efforts made by churches, examples of churches that adopted the Kairos Palestine and the BDS call. Omar al-Barouthi, who's a well-known co-founder of the BDS movement, notes that the move by the Presbyterian Church, which is a mainstream church in the US, in 2004 to adopt a resolution to support a process of phase selective divestment and multinational corporations doing business in Israel was one of the most important developments. So in addition to Israeli companies operating in Gaza and on the borders of Gaza and the West Bank itself, we have also international companies like G4S, which is a Danish-British company running Israel's prisons, or Caterpillar, which is an American company which provides the Israeli army with bulldozers to destroy Palestinian houses. So we have international companies, the same as Israeli companies maintaining Israel's occupation. In the same line, the United Church of Christ Committee in the US called for divestment from Israel, especially Israeli products produced in West Bank settlements such as Ahaba, which is a beauty products company located in Jericho. And as a result of the boycott against Ahaba, it moved its West Bank factory from Ma'ale Adumim settlement in Jericho to Israel itself. And we have also Soda Stream, which is also another Israeli water gas company. The Presbyterian Church in the US again voted in 2014 during its General Assembly to boycott Caterpillar, HP, and Motorola Solutions for their role in maintaining Israel's occupation. The reason Caterpillar has been boycotted is because in addition to destroying Palestinian houses, it killed an American activist called Rachel Corrie in Rafah in 2003. So American activists and Palestinian activists in the US used this as an excuse to convince churches to boycott Israel. In 2007, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, with 5 million followers, took another decision to boycott Israeli products during its General Assembly. The Church of England decided in 2009 to divest from Caterpillar. So some of these companies, some of these churches have hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of them have dozens of millions of dollars in investment in Israeli and international companies. So it varies from one church to another, how effective the resolution is. The United Methodist Church issued a report in 2010 which contained recommendations to boycott dozens of Israeli international companies over their role in Palestine. Again, the Brethren Benefit Trust of the Church of the Brethren sold the stocks it holds in Caterpillar a few weeks before a meeting scheduled to discuss the boycott, adopting the BDS call. And this is a church in England. The Methodist Church divested about $110,000 worth of stock holdings in G4S. The Quaker Church too, which is one of the first churches to operate in Palestine following the Nakba, became the first US national fund to divest from HP Veolia, which is a French company operating trains in Jerusalem. The church decision cost the companies $21 million in an investment. These are just like examples. I don't think I will spend all of my time talking about these examples. There are more examples, but here there is an important note that since this movement in the churches in Europe and the US started, it has been very active in 2011, 2012, but recently, starting from 2016, less churches adopted the BDS call, both in the US and Europe. And I think now there is a new strategy by Palestinians, especially the steering committee of the BDS movement, considering the large presence of Palestinian diaspora in Latin America. They want to get more churches in Latin America to adopt the BDS call. So in November 5, so it's very recent, 2020, the Palestinian Federation of Chile signed a memorandum of understanding with Kairos Palestine to support the BDS movement. And there are a lot of church leaders from Palestine, such as Atallah Hanna, Michel Sabah, who attended the signing. So the expectation is that this battle will finally move to Latin America in the near future. The impact of the BDS movement on Israel, this is the last part of the presentation. And there are more details to this, but I think I will just point to some examples. Israel's former finance minister, Yair Lapid, recognized that the impact of the BDS have on Israel could cause Israel's economy a potential loss of 5.7 billion in losses and making around 10,000 people jobless. So economically speaking, the BDS movement has an impact on Israel. Israel's economy is still strong, but the BDS movement is gaining. And that's why Israel is looking for new markets now in India and China, other than Western Europe and the US. Also, the BDS campaigners believe that the impact of the movement is not just the economic losses it causes to the Israeli economy, but also for public image it causes. Because we know that, especially when the churches, join the BDS call, this sends a message to people outside the world that the conflict is not religious, and it's not just about Muslims versus Jews. In Palestine, we have 30% of the population of Palestinians before Nakba were Christians. They were damaged by the occupation. Now the population stands at 1% because of Israel's occupation. So this sends a message to Christian groups all over the world that Palestinian Christians also suffer from the occupation equally. And there is a movie about this called When the Stones Cry Out, which talks about the suffering of Palestinian Christians under Israeli occupation. So in terms of campaigning and advocacy and the image Israel is trying to maintain in Western Europe and the US, having Christian churches and leaders contribute to the BDS movement is very harmful to Israel's image. The Kairos Palestine call in 2009 was a dramatic shift in the involvement of Palestinian Christians. Palestinian Christians have always been involved in the resistance to Israel's occupation, and the British occupation as well of Palestine, starting from 1917. And they have contributed to the BDS movement since it started in 2005. But here I'm addressing how Christian churches as institutions join the BDS movement. Wherever you go, any call at US Union or on campuses, students, that you'll find Palestinian Christians too, along with even groups such as the Jewish Voice for Peace. So there are different faith and groups that that have been involved in the pro-Palestine advocacy, but here I'm highlighting the involvement of Christian institutions in Palestine in the BDS movement. As we have seen, major churches have supported the BDS cause, such as the Quaker Church, the Presbyterian Church, the United Church of Christ. So it's not just like a marginal minor church here and there. We have mainstream churches supporting the BDS movement. Also, it's also important to highlight that diasporic Palestinians have played an important role both in Europe and the US in convincing churches in the US and Europe to boycott or to join the BDS movement.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Yusuf. You ran out of your time, so it would be great if you could quickly round up your last words.
Conclusion here, actually, this is the last slide, is to moving the BDS movement to Latin America, as we have seen following the Memorandum of Understanding signed a few days ago in Palestine between the Federation of Palestinians in Chile and Palestinian churches in the West Bank, will be a dramatic shift in the work of churches in joining the BDS movement in Latin America. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf. Now we will listen to Dr. Özüm, Sezin, UZUN, to find out if coexistence is possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that after these two comprehensive presentations of previous speakers on the Israel occupation and the current realities in Palestine territory, my topic would sound quite naive, but I think that indeed all regarding the latest developments, it seems quite unlikely, but I think that it's noteworthy to think about the possibility of peace in Israel and Palestine. Of course, I'm not talking about between the communities, but I'm talking about between two states, I mean, Palestine and Israel. I'm not quite sure, are you seeing my PowerPoint slides right now?
Seeing half of it, so if you could share, no, it's okay now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned before, recent developments makes us to think that the peaceful coexistence is quite unlikely currently. But why? So then I'm looking for the possibility of peaceful coexistence. It's an important question for our listeners, I think, for our audiences. It's a kind of a rhetoric question, but I would like to explain why I'm searching on that issue. Because first of all, I would like to find out, is there any possibility to revive peace negotiations? Does the continuation of conflictual relations serve to someone's interests? To whom? What kind of interest do they have? So I would like to more focus on the conflict profiteers and peace dividends then. And also, of course, these studies would like to take attention on these issues in Turkey specifically, among Turkish scholars and students, because in recent years, specifically by the 2000s, these questions are asked highly widely by Israeli scholars and also Palestinian scholars as well. And also, of course, the next or future studies this study would like to pave the way for the future studies to focus on political and economic disincentives for peace. Peaceful coexistence, even though it's not a very latest concept in international relations. It has a historical background from the Bolshevik Revolution, and at that time it was used to refer relations between revolutionaries and others, so between two communities. But here, as I explained in the beginning, I would like to more focus on the state level rather than the community levels between Israelis and Palestinians. And by the 1950s, what we are seeing about the concept of peaceful coexistence, the meaning has been broadened. And it started to include solving problems through respecting others' sovereignty and territorial integrity. And now, at the last moment, what we have regarding the meaning of the peaceful coexistence, it includes equality, mutual benefit, and non-intervention and non-interference in others' domestic affairs. So these became the principles of international law. So as you are seeing, historically, the meaning of the concepts has broadened and deepened, and it's more and beyond the existing together, but also living together peacefully. So regarding our case, Israel and Palestine, we have two solutions so far, one state or two state solution. Of course, these two strategies or these two outcomes are requiring different peaceful coexistence requirements. So please keep in mind that throughout the presentations and my paper as well, emphasizing and or build up on the basis of the two-state solution. So I'm searching for any possible peaceful coexistence based on two-state solution. And regarding the case of Israel and Palestine, of course, the first requirement for the peaceful coexistence is the recognition of political sovereignty. And why it seems or it sounds unlikely, because of the difficulties over boundaries, as previous speakers mentioned, new settlements, new annexation plans. And on the other hand, there are some difficulties regarding the economic affairs, because in order to have a peaceful coexistence, economic independency should be built up. And in the case of Israel and Palestine, the question came to the top of the agenda: is disengagement from Israeli economy possible for Palestinian economy, of course. So when we are going through to the details of the Israel and Palestine cases, existence together has different dimensions, but recognition, trust, and support for peace from both sides are seen quite prerequisites. And what we do have from the field research, which was made by Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research in 2002, recently, few months before, they conducted a public poll in order to understand the hierarchy of priorities for the two publics, Israelis and Palestinians, and what were their most important demands and what concessions were the most difficult for them to make versus those that were less difficult. And I think that the results are quite interesting. And from the Israeli respondent perspective, it seems that the recognition of the Jewish connection to the land is the most important demand. And the demand for the Palestinians in prison, those involved in violence, is the concession which could be the most difficult for them to make. However, the results of the poll shows that a plurality did not believe Israel should have to make concessions in return for its own demands, indicating that Israeli demands should be unconditional. From the Palestinians' perspective, majority declined to choose a specific concession Palestinians should make in return for its negotiation in negotiators' demands. But the top demand Palestinians prioritized was the release of Palestinians. And the main concessions they accepted to make, those who choose one, was removing incitement from textbooks. I think that these results are quite interesting and demonstrate us why peaceful coexistence at the current situation is quite unlikely at the community level. And also 90% of the Palestinians and 79% of Israeli Jews think that the other side is not trustworthy. And both sides are emphasizing the lack of trust on their and the other side's leadership. And then one of the interesting questions of the poll is about the next on the conflict, and 34% of the Palestinians, 41% of Israelis chose reach a peace agreement. Even though it doesn't seem so much bad, but why it is alarming for us, because we are seeing that the results on reaching a peace agreement after this level, conflictual relations, has been decreasing. When we are comparing the results in 2018, the respondents' choices on reaching peace agreement were higher than today's. Okay, regarding the political disincentives for peace, of course, we do have both sides' ideological roots and the political parties. I don't want to go, I don't want to explain in detail and take your time so much on that issue, because most probably all of us are familiar with the political ideologies of both sides, and who are pro-peace agreement, who are opposing to the peace agreements. But just from that table, we are seeing that in both sides there are political ideology which are emphasizing or which are supporting or disagreeing peace agreements. And also, not only ideology, leaders, the political leaders are highly considered to be re-elected. So we have to keep in mind the political disincentives or incentives for peace based on the considerations of political leaders to be re-elected and their ideological roots, and using this issue at the domestic political affairs. I would like to go very fast with the political developments, because I would like to allocate my time on the political issues, because the previous speakers are well explained what happened by the declaration of Israel state and then the 1967 Israeli occupation, and how intifadas and also accords paved the way for peaceful coexistence. But of course, as you know, at the end, in the 2000s, all these initiatives became deadlocked, and the occupation is the reality of the territory, and also the conflictual situation has been deepening, specifically after the policies of the Trump administration. So I would like to allocate my time more on the economy in peace building and economic disincentives. As you know, liberal concept of peace emphasizes business actors that can play a constructive role in building peace. And we do have lots of examples in the conflict resolution and the business actors' involvement to that process, peace building, negotiation process, and the post-conflict peace keeping role. So in South Africa, in Mozambique, in Northern Ireland, these are some examples how private sectors, business actors are actively involved and have taken constructive roles. On the other hand, we are seeing that the involvement of business actors are also demonstrating us conflict profiteers, rent seekers, because in some cases, business actors can be spoiler of peace. And on the other hand, we do have pro-peace entrepreneurs. And one of the basic aim of that research is to understand conflict profiteers and rent seekers or pro-peace entrepreneurs in the case of Israel and Palestine. One of the significant development, of course, is supported by the Trump administration, and it was called Peace to Prosperity, a vision to improve the life of Palestinian and Israeli people. And based on that initiative, the Trump administration recognized of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and the transfer of American embassy to the city, and CC's ended US support to the United Nations relief for Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. So the cut of the US budget created another big problem for the Palestinians and the populations. And also the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared that settlements are no longer considered as violation of international law, and West Bank will not be considered no longer as occupied territory, but under the control of Israel. So when we look at the economic disincentives and from both sides economic impacts on the peace negotiation, we will see that Trump administration's initiatives created a big burden, economic burden, of course, on Palestinians. And from the Palestinian perception, these initiatives, of course, demonstrated a political rupture between United States and Palestinian Authority. And economic component of the vision funds to be allocated to the Palestinians and regional cooperation, but huge infrastructure projects such as tunnels, bridges, streets, schools, hospitals, and universities requires raw materials, equipment, and technology. So a large part of the funds would end up in the accounts of major Israeli corporations. So as you can see from the economic component of the vision, Palestinians, Palestine economy will be more dependent on the Israeli economy. So because of that, the continuation of the conflictual relations or the maintenance of status quo is serving for someone's interests and benefit. But of course, recently, as you know, the Trump administration replaced by the election of the Biden, but still there are some uncertainties. Of course, it's so new developments, and we have to wait for. But what are the latest reaction from the Palestinians? For instance, Hanan Ashrabi, a member of the PLO Executive Committee, said that the first step is to get rid of Trump and the danger he poses. And then she stressed that Biden would not be a savior for the Palestinians. So the restoration of the Palestinian Authority's relations with the United States after Biden's victory is under discussion and evaluation. And matters do not happen automatically, she added when she was expressing her perception. And she underlined that must be determined, and there's a need for change in many issues. So because of that, I think just thinking and focusing on the possibility of peaceful coexistence at the national level became quite significant, despite all the difficulties and the challenges. So then we are comparing economic disincentives for peace based on the idea of war profiteers and peace dividends. When we are looking from both sides, it's interesting because all the reports from the organizations and all the academic studies are or could be categorized into different sections. For instance, for Israel, some studies are mentioning economic profits from Palestinian market and geographical location. For instance, there is no cost of transportation, or Palestinian market, which is quite important, significant for low tech and low cost of Israeli product, are seeing us economic profits from Palestinian market from the perspective, from the sides of Israeli business actors. On the other side, the reports or the academic studies are emphasizing that there is no impediment for peace regarding Israeli actors, business actors, because they are explaining that Palestinian market constitutes small part of the Israeli exports, only 3%, and also peace or two-state solution would increase economic profits, specifically in the sectors of electricity and fuel sectors. And also peace would not mean for the Israeli economy or for the Israeli business actors totally losing Palestinian market. And lastly, some reports are totally arguing another arguments. There are some impediments for peace. For instance, profits of Israeli agricultural products and byproducts and food are highly consumed by the Palestinians, and Israeli business actors are gaining huge profits of construction from the settlement policy. And at the settlements, there is no tax of business companies. And of course, new annexation plan of Israel are highly serving for the Israeli business actors' interests. On the other hand, when we are looking from the Palestine perspective, study or...
Sorry for the interruption, Dr. Özüm. Final words, please, as you have already run out of your time.
Okay, just 2 minutes, please. I'll conclude as much as possible, as soon as possible. And also, the Palestine, most of the studies are underlining dependence on Israeli economy. So not only economically, but also politically as well. It is dependent because of the Israeli control over borders, over ports, and also the possibility of two-state solution is highly questioned by the scholars because of the Palestinian economy, and we are again underlining is the possibility or is the disengagement of the Palestinian economy from the Israel economy would be possible. And as a conclusion, we can say that business actors are quite important, and right now, specifically after the Biden's election and since the peace negotiation process became a deadlock, maybe we should, scholars, researchers, policymakers, advisors to the policymakers should more focus on the business actors' role in peace building and coexistence, and conflict profiteers in both sides should be more considered how their benefits could be terminated. With Israel-Palestine conflict will be solved in the boardrooms of the multinationals because some scholars are saying so. So as I mentioned, this is an ongoing research, it's not finished yet, and if you will have any suggestions or comments on that, I would welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Özüm. Now we are slowly drifting away from the current status to listen Dr. Nurcan Yurdakul and her insights on the implications of Anglo-Russian rivalry in the Ottoman Kudüs. Now the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you very much, University of Sakarya, for letting us to contribute our researches to the area, and thanks a lot for the previous panelists for their outstanding contributions. And I will take you to 200 years earlier, the origin of the Palestine question, or the internationalization of the very small town Jerusalem on the early 19th century. What made me work and search in this area? Let me first tell you my motivation behind. Basically, my specialization area are the consuls, the British consuls, generally speaking, in the Near East, and how these consuls were instrumented for political objectives of the Great Britain. That was my main area. But the United States decision, or the Trump's administration, outstanding or very different, strange decision of moving US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on May 14 of 2018 made me think about the first British consul in the area, because there was no British consul, or there was not any consul of any country in Jerusalem until 1838. So why there wasn't before, and why the UK for now and the Great Britain for that time made such a decision? What were the motivations behind the Palmerston administration, or because he was the foreign secretary at that time? How did they make that decision? And we need to call first the political situation of the area of that time. As everybody remembers, the uprising of the governor of Egypt was a big thing in the history of not only Ottoman Empire, but for generally speaking, for the balance of power of Mediterranean of that time. And we witnessed the differentiation on the alliances of the time, and we noticed the British leaving aside it is policy for the Ottoman Empire, which was supporting the unification land of Ottoman Empire. And why then the British made that decision? My very conclusion and the very statement for writing that paper and making that submission is that it is a result of British or Anglo-Russian rivalry in the region. So there was nothing to do. I mean, let me first tell my very first reasons. It was nothing religious, nor there was nothing related with the sympathy of Jewish return to Palestine or to Jerusalem. Because let us see the correspondence of the time. It was first on 1834, Mr. Ferran, the British consul in Damascus of that time, asked the attention of British Foreign Secretary for the Roman Catholics' activities, missionary activities in the region, and asking Britain, please station a consulate immediately in our region, in Jerusalem, to protect our interest in the region against France. Sphere of influence, because as you remember, it was French government who was the first one who allied with the revolted governor, Mehmed Ali Pasha, the Kavalalı. So it was scared that it would be under French sphere of influence. So British government asked to accord its foreign policy accordingly. Palmerston just ignored. And later, again, the consul in Cairo asked for the attention of Palmerston for the area, talking about the close relations between British government and the Armenian of the region. And an Armenian, Mr. Marat, a subject of Ottoman Empire, could be appointed as a consul and would be very beneficial for British interest in the region. Palmerston again just ignored this letter and made no correspondence at all and no replies to these letters. But when another letter came from Cairo consul to Palmerston on 1836, announcing arrival of valuable gift from Moscow Church, Russian Orthodox Church, to the Greek Church in the region, Palmerston immediately jotted down. It is expedient to open a station, consulate station in Jerusalem. It is an immediate decision was taken. In Ottoman, we call this tiz bir konsolosluk orada açıla. And so the 2 years, they waited 2 years to open the station. It's not because that they hesitated to open the station, the consulate station. These 2 years, the British Embassy in Istanbul made the necessary correspondence and gained the necessary permissions from the Baba Ali government. So these 2 years were spent for making this decision justifiable and acceptable by the Ottoman authorities. So as it is well known by some authorities, the Ottoman government were not that easy for opening such a station. They took as much as they could, but at that time, Mustafa Reşit Pasha, who was planning to initiate Tanzimat reforms and who was searching for British support in the area against the uprising of Egypt uprising, was in fact in the favor of British policies. Though these policies, it took more than 2 years for the British authorities to go through such procedures to open such a station. And eventually, the British managed to open on August 1838 to open a British consulate in the region. Why that is so important? Because it represents the first internationalization of Jerusalem. Or in the very core, in the very center, we can say it represents the famous Arab-Israel conflict of 20th century. Because it is France and later Russia followed Britain to open their own consulates in Jerusalem. Second, we witness the intensifying activities of missionary activities in the region. And how then the British missionaries supported and acted in line with political policies, because it was very well known that the British missionary activities were not directed to the Orthodox Christians or the rest of people. It was first directed to the Jewish people. It is called the Jewish restoration, or making the Jewish real religious people and making them Protestant. So it aimed the conversion of the Jewish, either living in Britain or living in the area, and particularly living in Jerusalem. Why it was British attention was directed to Jewish? Because the British noticed by the time they aimed to convert them and to make them Protestant, have a base, population base there. Because they knew very well that the Orthodox Arabs were under Russian protection. That was the very right of Russia to protect the Orthodox Arab. So it was the very right and of France to protect the Roman Catholics. And Britain remained groundless. So to create a ground for themselves, they first aimed to Jewish. to convert, but noticing that they couldn't convert anyone, not more than 50 people, as I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, were converted to be Anglican. So they directed their activities to Orthodox Arab, and they failed to make that conversion, and later they aimed the Jewish return to Palestine. Of course, there were a lot of activities by international and national. By national, we mean here the British national Jewish activities in British Parliament to convince people, because as you remember, the Jewish involvement in British Parliament goes back to 1854, and it is very much related with the Benjamin Disraeli's cabinet activities, who was a converted Jew. And later he would say that I have never been converted Anglican, and later he would confess that I have never been an Anglican, I was a Jewish and I am a Jewish. Anyway, here what we need to go back and talk about the Russian very right or the privilege of protecting Orthodox Arab. Why? It was Russian duty or Russian privilege for that protection. The political implication of this protection is the Ünkar İskelesi Treaty signed between the Russian and Ottoman Empire, and we know that Russia could get the very right, the concrete right of protecting Orthodox people within Ottoman Empire. And in fact, that treaty again was used by Mustafa Reşit Pasha to convince the British that it will be under Russian influence. It will be under Russian influence, and Russia will be a threat to the trade routes to India. So, as we know very well, British foreign policy's very sensitive and central point is Suez Channel, and that there was no Suez Channel at that time, as you remember, because the Suez Channel was initiated on 1869, and that is again another moment of return of Jewish to those land. Anyway, so it was a threat by Russians. So why the Russian church, the Orthodox church, had this priority? There are a lot of explanations. Some people talk about the will of Peter the Great, but the very strange finding, nobody so far made any reference as far as I know, is Voltaire, the French Enlightenment intellectual. Voltaire contribution, he has a contribution into this area on his book, The Great Russian History and Peter the Great book. He has a book written and published on 18th century. He talks about the Russian church priority and privilege of defending the rights of Orthodox. His approach is that.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Dr. Nurcan. We are about to finish the live broadcast, so if you could quickly round up your last words in 10 seconds.
Do I have 3 minutes or 2
unfortunately. You don't
Just
have any more minutes.
Okay. Voltaire's conclusion is that he says, because all the Orthodox Church, the Fenerity is in Istanbul, the other one in Antakya or Alexandria, the other one in Jerusalem. All these Orthodox church were under Ottoman authority and they were enslaved to the Turks. So the Russian Orthodox Church was the only free one who can and should defend the Orthodox Christian interest in the region. So I suggest that for the political studies or international studies of the present time, what is Russian role connected to the Orthodox Arabs now Russia is playing in Syria and Palestine and Israel, generally speaking? So that is my question for further study suggestions. Thank you very much for your patience and thank you very much for your understanding.
Thank you very much. Thanks again to all the participants and presenters. We'd like to say thank you to Sakarya Middle East Institute for bringing us together in this wonderful event. And I hope that the presentations will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention again and have a good day.